open up the meeting. So, good evening. Tonight is Monday, March 1st. It's just after 7 p.m. We have two public hearings this evening. First one is Wall Street Development Corporation, 48 Burns Ave. And this is request for project change modification to a comprehensive permit dated 1/26/21, and the modify with subsequent letter of 2/10/2021 to amend previously approved project to include modified conditions of the decision filed with the town clerk on January 13th, 2020. So there's a lot going on here, and right now we have four different issues that have come before the Zoning Board of Appeals for this one property. So we have a decision that's been issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals for this Burns Ave project, where the board approved the project, and that is now under appeal by the applicant. The second issue that we had was a plan modification where Brook Lane was involved, and because the applicant wasn't going to pay for the peer review of that was denied. Now we're at the third issue, and this is, we already determined that there's 7 points that are substantial modifications of the plan, and that's where we're at tonight. And then next, in 2 nights from now, we're going to have another one for another modification request to determine whether it is substantial or minor modification, and that will be on next Wednesday night. So for tonight, we have, the way I'm looking at it is 7 points that the applicant is going to present for things that the applicant wants for modifications of the already existing permit, which is under appeal. So, Ashley, what do you have to add to that?
I just wanted to note that the first letter that we received on January 26th, one of the requested modifications was to allow for 7 structures with occupancy for up to 6 families per structure. In a letter dated February 10th, that request was removed. So I just, for folks trying to follow this process, the modifications that you're reviewing is for 6 structures, not 7.
Okay. We also, do board members have any questions where we are in this process? Okay. We do have town council with us, although Amy, you have not been working on this case. Do you have anything to say or any bits of guidance?
Fortunately, I couldn't even really follow along. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait 1 second.
Use people that also live in her house.
I am so sorry. So unprofessional. I have 2 dogs playing in my room. Sorry about that.
I have 6 kids playing in the house. So.
Yeah. Okay, you win. We can throw the dogs out. So, but anyway, prior to that, I was listening, and I still, that's a lot to digest.
Okay. We also fortunately have with us tonight Judy Barrett. Judy Barrett, good evening. I know you're here for the other case that's coming up. Do you have anything, any guidance for us on
I've just never heard of so many modifications coming in close together. I'm having trouble even keeping track of this. I guess I'm wondering what's the problem?
Well, yeah, we're keeping track of them, and we're okay with it. We'll work through this, but thank you for your input.
My useless input.
Yeah, no, a good observation on your part, but we actually are tracking it, we're managing it, and working with the applicant to address these issues. Okay, so that being said, Ashley, we've got 7 points that we're going to look at tonight, is that correct?
I believe so. Yep.
Okay.
Or,
Okay, and it would have been very helpful if the plans actually showed what was already approved and then the modifications on the plan, but that's not necessary. We can work with that. So, Mr. Petrosi, at this point, do you want to explain your the modifications and why they differ from the already approved plan, and why these are major modifications or substantial modifications are necessary? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I wouldn't, in my estimation, I wouldn't view these as substantial changes. I would view them more or less as house cleaning matters, and they don't necessarily refer to the plan itself, but they refer to the wording of the conditions of the comprehensive permit that the board issued back in January last year. So if it's okay, I will just go through them one by one and just sort of give you an idea of why we're having this discussion. So as Ashley said, item number 1 has been deleted. That was my error. I was looking at a previous plan. But item number 2 in the comprehensive permit, the board had a condition, C1A, which required the board required us to deliver a check to the board so that you folks could retain an outside technical review of the subsequent plans that we're going to submit. But the board never determined what that amount is. So essentially, I'm asking for that condition to be modified so that we can agree on an amount, so that we can provide that amount in conjunction with us satisfying the conditions of the rest of the comprehensive permit. So in our view, we've requested that the board determine that $5,000 would be a reasonable amount at this stage to retain, the peer review beta to review the plans that were previously the subject of the hearing process, but did require some final modifications, which the board will be receiving, or if they haven't already received it, they'll be receiving shortly. So essentially, this is just a determination of what amount is reasonable at this stage of the process to deposit with the town, so the board can retain an outside technical review.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Yep, just go to the next one.
Okay, the second one is refers to, at the time the project, the comprehensive permit was approved by the board, there was a pending appeal with DEP, and DEP subsequently issued a superseding order. So this modification just simply deals with inserting the new dates in the order of the superseding order that is relevant to the project now, since the conservation order of conditions is no longer valid. So that's condition C1C. The next one, condition C2H, the applicant shall provide, and this is the wording in the permit, the applicant shall provide security in amount and form acceptable to the town for emergency sediment control and site stabilization. So we've requested that provision be incorporated into the security that's to be provided for the entire project, which is condition number I.1, which relates to a bonding mechanism that is currently used under the subdivision control law. Same thing for number 5. 5, the board wanted security for some event possibly that might happen in the future of 125% of the bona fide estimate of the cost of restorative landscaping, which is kind of a subjective type of provision. Again, we're asking that whatever security amount that we determine is applicable to this condition be incorporated as a line item in the bonding security that is also outlined in condition I.1. Number 6 is similar to just simply inserting the new superseding order from DEP in this condition, D1E, references the Conservation Commission's order of conditions, which is no longer valid, and replacing it with the superseding order of conditions issued by Mass DEP dated February 20th. Number 7, same thing related to the order of conditions, the superseding order of conditions that was issued. And number 9, is the same issue related to the superseding order of conditions issued by Mass DEP. So essentially, these are housekeeping type matters. They don't relate specifically to modification of the plan. They're just simply correcting the status of the wording of some of the conditions that were in the original comprehensive permit, and referencing the proper documentation so that when we proceed, that we're all on the same page.
Okay, thank you for your explanation of that. That was helpful and quite clear. What did you skip number 8 on that list?
You know, I think 7 and 8 relate to each other. In other words, 8 should have been shouldn't have been a number next to
Okay.
that.
Okay, that's fine. I just, because I'm writing it down as you were going, and so it jumped from 7 to 9, but I'm okay with it where I see the numbering sequence.
Yeah, just for some reason it didn't.
Okay.
Well,
So one of the things, I do have a question on the bonding for the stabilization and the restorative landscaping. If this is all part of the bond for the whole construction of the site, how would the board get at the funds for stabilization if there was a problem? Would the board have to call the entire? I think the board would have to call the entire bond. You can't call a piece of it.
well, I'm not quite sure what the channel of how that would work, just personally, but usually, when you get a bond from the town or on a subdivision, you have line items for each aspect of construction, whether it's drainage, pavement, sewer, water, electric, all that stuff is always, it's line items. So we could work out the wording as a separate line item for each one of these items. And quite frankly, if we're proceeding with construction, those 2 provisions were only in the event that construction were to stop for a lengthy period of time. So they're kind of what if events. And I don't necessarily think you'd have to pull an entire bond for that amount, but sometimes you can put a line item in with just maintenance type of issues.
Okay, Ashley, I saw you raise your hand. Do you have something to say on that? Because that's not my experience with bonds like that. So go ahead, Ashley.
So my memory of this condition was that Carl and engineering helped draft the language. So for items number 4 and 5, I'd like to get a recommendation from Carl, because I think he handles those issues often for the town.
and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. So let me ask it, the other question is when the zoning board approves a site plan or a special permit, how do you condition that type of work? Would you issue a similar condition, and how would you post security for that? If this were not a 40B project.
I think it'd be just like this. So you're being treated the same as you would for any other project in town. So the bonding, I agree with Ashley. We can check with the town engineer, Mr. Baldoff, and find out, you know, if it is like you're saying, Mr. Petrosi, an easy fix, we can make that easy fix. But if it's something that needs to remain, well, we're going to make sure that it remains to protect the town's interest on that.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing on this, so it's not so much the security itself as the type of security that's posted. So for example, if you're using the subdivision control law, you have under the subdivision control law under 81U, you have 2 or 3 or 4 types of methods for posting security. It could be a letter of credit, it could be a tripartite agreement, it could be a bond, it could be cash. So I think we need to determine what potential the amount could be, and then allow for us to post that security in the form that's comparable to 81U. And that's really kind of how I'm trying to explain it.
Okay, and again, I don't disagree with you. I think that what we want to do is we want to have input from the town engineer who deals with these things all the time, and you know, get that input. The other one's the DEP. You know, the conditions, the overriding order, the superseding order from DEP. I actually think that if anything, this might help clear it up. And but I do want to have Landis Hershey, the conservation agent, just tell us whether that is going to cover everything, and make sure that that's done right before we do anything with that. And then as far as what do board members think about the $5,000 for outside technical reviews and inspections? Ashley, yeah, go ahead, Ashley. What's your thought on 5,000?
So I would suggest that we get a few scopes of work. I think that's the only way that we'll be able to know whether or not that's a reasonable amount.
Well, Mr. Chairman, who is actually going to do the inspections? Because on subdivisions, the town engineer does primarily does the inspections for sewer, water, and drainage. Not quite sure where the outside peer reviewer would be involved, and in which case we'd still insist that it be Bader as the peer reviewer, since they're the ones that reviewed the project.
You know, Mr. Petrosi, you're seeing a lot of heads shaking. Mine is not shaking, but other heads are shaking. So on the, remember, the zoning board is the one that decides who's going to be the peer reviewer on this. So it'll be whoever the zoning board decides it does the peer reviewing, and can do the job that we think is necessary. So Ashley, so you think we should get some scope of works as far as what that would involve?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else you decide what a reasonable fee is for that review. So we can get scopes from 3 people, if that would be good. It sounds like, so that covers number 2, conditions 3 and 4. I'll touch base with Carl on, and then I will reach out to Landis to make sure that the conditions related to DEP all make sense with her, and that there's not anything else you can make with those.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. That covers all the points. Board members, any questions or comments on moving forward with this? Suzanne, you okay?
I'm good.
Okay. let's see, Ashley, you've been working a lot on this. Is this something we need to, I don't think we need to vote on anything because what do we need to do, Ashley?
So you've opened this up as a new hearing because you decided that the changes were substantial. So you would follow that same process. So you would need to vote to continue this to a date certain.
Okay. So one thing I did notice, you say it's a new hearing, but we don't have a case number for this. Should we have a case number, do you think?
Yeah, a decision will need to be filed, just like the other one. So we'll get a case number.
Okay. Yeah. So Amy, did you have anything to say on the case number or anything?
Me?
Yeah,
This year?
you. Yeah.
So what generates the case number is Viewpoint, the permitting system. So I would need a filing into Viewpoint for a case number
Okay.
to be made.
Okay. If you would, will you work with Ashley to figure out how you can just file that in so we get a case number for this? And
Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, not that I want to complicate things, but why wouldn't it just be an amended comprehensive permit, not a case number?
I think it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other.
Well, it's a little simpler if you do it as, like if it were a subdivision, let's say, you just amend the subdivision plan. You wouldn't file a new application for a subdivision, so.
But you filed your first modification in Viewpoint, which generated a case number.
No, I understand, but the modifications that we're seeking are under the housing rules and regulations, so it's kind of a different animal, so. And you can do it however you want it, but I'm thinking more simpler that you just amend it.
So right now, there is no case number. If we do need to get a case number, we'll get a case number on it. And what I'd like to do is continue this out until February 7th, when we can have,
April?
April.
sorry, yeah, February, April. Sorry, thank you, folks.
Don't make me relive February.
Yeah. So, continue out until April 7th, and at that point we can have all these questions answered and move forward with the question about the modifications. So, anybody have any thoughts on that? Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So.
So moved.
Okay. Let's see, procedurally, Ashley, on this, I know Suzanne moved it, but I do have a procedural question. Is this something that the applicant, is there a time limit on this for the zoning board?
So you have 180 days like you would a 40B application.
Okay.
Judy or Amy can chime in if I'm wrong there.
No, you're correct.
Okay, thank you, Judy, and thank you, Ashley. Okay, so let's put this to April 7th, and we will have those questions answered. And if it's as straightforward as you said, Mr. Petrosi, might not be that difficult.
Okay, huh?
We're easy.
So there's nothing for me additionally to provide them. This is basically, the board are going to pursue opinions from staff, and we're just gonna respond to whatever the staff reports back.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay.
See how simple that was?
Okay, so it was moved by Suzanne. Could I have a second?
Did someone say 7 p.m.? Sorry, I just didn't hear it.
Okay. So this will be continued until April 7th at 7 p.m. by Zoom meeting, unless something changes between now and then. Okay. Roll call has been moved, seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Jane Coffey.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
I'm John Lee. Aye. Okay. Good. So that we'll have some answers on those 7 points for our meeting on April 7th. Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is case number 0320 55SS LLC. This is 515355 Summer Street comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws 40B. And we were at this, it seems like only a week ago. It was actually less than a week ago. And we have with us tonight, we have Town Council, and we have Judy Barrett, Sean Reardon I see coming into the meeting. Good evening, everybody. And I see Mr. Hales here, Phil Mackey, Leslie French. So we've made some progress on this, and right now I think there's really about 3 issues that we're looking to address. And before I say anything more, I'm going to ask either Ashley or Amy Questle, do you want to explain where we are at this point procedurally?
It's up to you, Ashley. Either one of us can do it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we went through the waivers, and there were a couple of waivers that it appeared the board was not happy with, and so we need to. One of them we need to. Well, I guess we looked for more information on them. So the height waiver, and then the water resource protection district waivers. So we want to go through those and find out, where the board is on that. We did have some questions on parking also. So I did provide a draft decision. However, I have asked that decision not be marked up because I think it's going to change after tonight. And so I would have to send out, a new decision. But that's where we are now. I did receive recommended conditions from some members, and so I've also put together a chart with the recommended condition and what condition it actually is in the decision, so you guys can all cross-reference and make sure that what you guys wanted to see in there is in there.
Okay, good. So tonight, I had 3 things. I think you just added a 4th one under parking that we really need to clarify and work on. But on my notes, the first one we had was height of the buildings. And Amy, am I on the right track?
Yes.
So we had 4 issues. First one, height of the buildings. And we know that the fire chief has expressed concerns. There's some safety concerns about that. And, that's a waiver that we talked about. And I know board members, myself included, were concerned about that. So what's board members' thoughts on that waiver at this point? Suzanne, you want to go?
I still feel it's much too high. It would be the tallest building in the town, and I am just not willing to have a skyscraper in South Walpole, in the woods.
And, Suzanne, I believe at the last meeting when you said that, Mr. Hale said that the buildings downtown were higher, but I've since talked to the building inspector, and that is not true. Those buildings are not higher than these proposed buildings.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hale.
So, and I think Phil can back me up on this. If you look at the project that Mr. LaRusso's company built, the front part of that apartment building is 6 stories tall. So the zoning, from a zoning perspective, it's not as tall because the lot rises in the back and it's the average grade. But from a health and safety perspective, it's a 70-foot tall building, or maybe 68 feet. But if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. It's just as tall.
Okay. Well, when I talked to the building inspector, he pointed out how they calculated the heights of the building. So, okay. Bob, what's your thought on heights of the building?
I think with all of the waivers, we're sort of balancing the factors in 40B. You know, health and safety being one of the items we can evaluate as compared to the local and regional needs for affordable units. You know, I guess one concern I would have is, although clearly fire protection falls within public safety, it seems to me that there have been instances where, you know, if a town needed to, for example, you know, purchase additional equipment to address some unique aspects of a 40B project, that, you know, it's sort of a balancing of the facts of that particular case as to whether or not, you know, in some cases, I think courts have said, you know, the need for housing frankly outweighs, you know, sort of economic concerns around whether we need to buy a new fire engine. In other cases, you know, depending on the specific facts, you know, so it's kind of a judgment call, I think, for the board to make. But I don't think we have sort of, I guess I would just caution that just because it's a public safety, fire safety issue, that it doesn't give us sort of carte blanche just because it falls into that category. I think we have to kind of evaluate the risks against the need for housing and then come out with a decision as to that. So I think the fire chief is, you know, voicing specific concerns which are real and are not to be taken lightly. I mean, it's not, yeah, we're really basing this on like considerations based on the safety of the people that are actually living in those buildings. So some of the folks who would benefit from the 40B aspects of it are going to be asked to live in a building potentially that for which the town doesn't have adequate equipment to fight a fire potentially. So, you know, to me, that's a legitimate concern. So I don't know. I'm not coming down hard yet one way or the other. Love to hear from other board members as to their thoughts as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, oh, I'm sorry, Member Coffey hasn't gone yet. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Amy.
Well, the only thing that I was going to say is I think I would have to echo Mr. Fitzgerald's comments, which are that there is so we have a 6-story building, and, you know, Mr. Mackey or Attorney Mackey, I'm sorry, is, you know, he's claiming that because this is in the limited manufacturing zoning district, that the, you know, footnote 10 applies. Footnote 10 applies to a building used for limited manufacturing. It doesn't apply to a building that will have residents living on the 6th, you know, story. So I'm not really sure that argument is an argument to be made, but notwithstanding that, Mr. Fitzgerald brings up very good points, which are that we always have to remember that, you know, the presumption that local housing has over us, the need for local affordable housing. And so if the waiver is denied, then the project will only be able to build a 40-foot building, which I think would maybe be 3 or 4 stories. The fire department has grave concerns about the 6 stories. So, you know, perhaps the applicant would be willing to go down to 5 stories, and if on each building. And if that were the case, I think that would be a waiver that would be granted in furtherance of the need for affordable housing.
Okay, but
Mr.
one of the
Chairman?
things, go ahead, Jane, did you have something? Go.
I do agree with Bob. I realize the need for affordable housing is primary concern here, but I really and truly don't feel that safety to this extent has to be compromised. I mean, I've said it before. I think taking off 1 story will lower the density there, because in the event of a fire, even if we had a piece of equipment that would go up that high, I'm thinking people are going to try and get out of there. The road is narrow as it is. how are the fire department going to get in there? I just think the density is an issue. And while I do realize the kind of the bind we're in under the 40B, and that we, the need for housing supersedes safety, but I have to tell you, I can't abide by that. I really feel that the density is an issue and the safety is an issue. I wouldn't want to be on the 6th floor trying to get out of there. I just think it's too much.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Drew Delaney, anything?
I agree with the other board members that the safety concern expressed by the fire department is certainly something that we need to take into consideration regarding this applicant's decision. I'd certainly like to see that the building height reduced. I think that would provide a much safer project for future residents and in this development.
Okay, so I think what you're seeing, at least what I'm seeing on this waiver, is there's concerns about it, and it's a big jump from 40 to the height
70 plus. 70 plus.
It's the height that we're at now. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, Mr. Mackey. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, you gave me a bunch of homework. I think that was Suzanne's phrase from last week. And I think I've done a bunch of it, but not all. And it's not been for lack of trying. So where we stand, and I'll hit this waiver first and then give you a broad brush in section 12, because it may allow you to focus your discussion on it better. I spoke with Mr. Yanovich last week, and he asked me to put my 2 questions basically on, does footnote 10 apply, and does the gallon per day provision in section 13 apply, given that the project is on sewer. I got a response today, which I have shared with Amy, Pat, Ashley. I think I hit the major players. I don't know if they managed to get it to you. I can't tell you it was a very verbose response, but in summary, I asked about the height, noting that the use is not allowed other than by a waiver through 40B. And his response was footnote 10 applies to every building in the limited manufacturing zone. If that's not sufficient, then I would ask Amy or Pat or someone on your behalf to intercede with him directly, because I don't want to try and interpret questions that you have incorrectly. But Ashley, I think, has responded to that, asking that we provide verification from the engineer as to how far away from the sidelines really are we, because that is the determining factor, which we will do, I believe, tomorrow. We weren't able to get the engineers to make that report this evening, as we literally only got Mr. Yanovich's written response, I think about 3:30 this afternoon. And so certainly we owe that to the town and the board. And I guess based on that, we can further discuss whether the height waiver is required or not. We don't believe it is. That said, that is literally only the height of the building. It's not safety concerns. It's not anything else that you've discussed. And I'm not arguing that at all. That may find its way in the decision somewhere else, but it may not necessarily be tied to a specific waiver, or at least this specific waiver. And then just as a point of clarification, and certainly I would never speak for Paul, he can speak for himself, that being the deputy fire chief, for those who were unfamiliar with the reference. I believe his main concern is personnel. It was not specifically tied to whether or not they had the apparatus to serve the building. I think his main issue was, per his letter, and he certainly can correct me or anybody else, if there is a call somewhere else in town, given their current levels of staffing, they would have an issue servicing this project in itself. I don't believe it was, they don't have the ability, technical or otherwise, it was a numbers issue. And so that's where we stand on that. And then again, I'm doing this in an attempt to narrow your discussion and help you through this. As far as Section 12 went, we have provided a letter and basically all of the requirements that I would normally submit if this were a 40A Section 12 special permit for impervious coverage. We believe we satisfy all the requirements, but certainly as this entire project is being peer reviewed, I will not speak for Sean or whomever else the board is leaning on as far as that. The only thing that was new that hadn't been submitted prior to last week was a certification from Katie Enright, professional engineer, as required by Section 12, that the project as conditioned, as designed, will not degrade the watershed or the water supply. That has been included, so I do believe you now have all of the information as far as impervious coverage. And we had the one request actually 3 different times. I think if you look at the waiver request that Amy had provided for our last discussion, the first one was under Section 12.2A, or it might be A2, I might have that backwards. But at any rate, that really, I think we overshared, not shared, we're over-inclusive the first time around, is that particular section does not deal with limitations, but rather what's allowed by right, and we clearly are not saying that anything here is allowed by right. As far as impervious coverage, we believe the proper request would be for greater than 15% impervious coverage for both lots 1 and 2, so 2 separate requests, which really narrows down our impervious coverage request to 1 request per lot. And then we looked at the definitions of bylaws. We looked at what Mr. Hale and his property is. He's clearly not going to be the one personally cleaning, but nonetheless, how his company manages the maintenance and cleaning of the common areas and everything else associated with this project. And we are respectfully withdrawing our request under the hazardous materials sections, which I think Amy had lumped as 3 different, or had 3 different sections lumped into 1 box on her spreadsheet. I would reserve our right at some future date to apply under 40A should a permit be required or necessary or desirable. But at this point, we do not believe we meet any of the hazardous material triggers. And we're not looking for any relief for that from this board at this time. And certainly, if you want to spell that out in your decision, I don't think we have any problem with that. And then last but not least, as far as impervious coverage goes, we were, I think in the notes, basically leaving it to the building commissioner's discretion as to whether or not we needed a special permit for greater than 15,000 gallons per day discharge. Again, he has fairly succinctly, I think in a 1-line response, but also has been provided to the variety of professionals this afternoon, and hopefully to your board, if not now, then shortly. But again, he has responded saying his project is on sewer, not septic, that section does not apply to this project. And I would add, by way of background, he apparently had that question posed to him for 40A project by a different applicant, different attorney, different somebody. But when I approached him last week, he said, we're already looking at this. My answer to you is going to be the same as them. Give me a couple of days. I said, fine. And this afternoon is when we got his answer on that. So hopefully that helps. That was some of my homework. We still owe you some more, a few more answers, specifically the report as to what the sidelines will be for the buildings. And I would note that in order to comply with the height regulations of footnote 10, we are making a minor modification to the internal lot line between the ownership side and the rental side, or lot 1 or lot 2, however you're conceptualizing the property. Because as was drawn on the last set of plans that was submitted to you, not the site plan, but the potential A&R plans, building 2 is too close to the sideline, but that can be moved to provide compliance with the bylaw. That's pretty much my report on the homework.
Old Star.
Thank you, Attorney Mackey. So, does anybody else have, I know Attorney Mackey jumped ahead to water resources, but does anybody have anything else on the heights? Obviously, there's concerns. The board has concerns, and we've discussed them. I think it's a big problem. So,
Can I just ask Chair Lee just one question on this waiver request? And maybe this is for town council, but can the waiver be, like, do we have authority to grant the waiver to a limited extent? In other words, as you sort of mentioned, it's not that we can deny it. We could deny it entirely if we wanted a 40-foot building, but if we're okay with a 5-story building that's, you know, whatever, 60 feet as opposed to 70, we could grant a waiver to that extent, but no further. Is that within our authority?
Town council, do you want to answer that?
I think she froze.
No, Judy Barrett, do you want to, are you comfortable answering that?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable answering it.
There's Amy.
Go ahead. Amy,
Sorry,
you want me to
sorry.
defer to you?
Sorry, yes, you can, you can grant, the waiver can be granted to, with, you know, a conditional grant of the waiver. And, you know, I think that you know, you said it right. I'm not sure that, denying the waiver in whole is the right thing to do in this instance. So, you know, perhaps just denying it to 5 stories, might make the, you know, the project could still go forward, and it's a little bit less dense and not as high, because there are safety concerns.
Thank you for that. And this is also something that the board need not vote on tonight, right? This is going to be lumped into the decision as in its entirety, so that we're voting on the final decision, and whatever that contains, it contains, and that's what we're voting on at that time. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, Ashley, you have a comment?
I do. So I just want to pull this up for a second so that people can, I'm a visual person, so I just want to show what we're talking about here. So I think there's 2 things. We need to figure out, or we need to, I've asked the applicant to provide an analysis based on these side yard setbacks. So that's what footnote 10 would be about. It wouldn't be based on the front yard setback or the rear yard setback. Within that footnote, it specifies that it's the smallest section. So that's the blue lines are showing that side yard setback. So what we need is an analysis telling us exactly what these setbacks are, so that we could know whether or not they're providing in excess to get that extra foot height. And so we need to know exactly what that number is. And if it turns out that in fact a waiver isn't required, then that doesn't mean the board can't say that 70 feet is still not an appropriate height. It just means that whatever you do decide needs to be drafted differently than if a waiver wasn't required.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear, that there's kind of two trajectories for that, and these blue lines are what we're talking about when we talk about that difference in what's required versus what's provided.
Thank you, Ashley.
And at the risk of speaking for Katie, I believe you'll have that tomorrow or shortly thereafter.
Thank you.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, in this situation, the applicant has the ability to adjust the setbacks, because they have the ability to adjust that center line. So the purpose of the limited manufacturing district with the footnote 10 is that you can have a building that is used for limited manufacturing that can be higher than other buildings because it has to be, but you don't have the residents in there. You don't have residents living in there. And the purpose of the setback is the higher you go, the further you are from the other, your abutters. Here, one of the abutters is the same project. So I don't really think that it satisfies the purpose of the bylaw at all.
I agree, and part of what I'm hearing is, well, it's allowed because it's limited manufacturing, but residential living is not allowed in limited manufacturing. So trying to play both sides, but that's what the zoning board will determine as far as where the proper point is. Okay. So let's see. Anything else on the height? I think we've talked about that. We've identified the issues. We're going to get some more information from the applicant on that. Next one, water resources, and this has to do with the impervious of Mr. Mackey talked about a greater than 15%, which is more than which is allowed, and board members, your thoughts on where we should be coming down on this request waiver.
I had some questions actually, Mr. Chairman. On the letter that was provided, there was a number of elements that were basically addressed with the response that it does not apply to special permit requests related to percentage percent impervious cover. And I guess I was looking for an explanation as to how we get to that conclusion. And looking at the bylaw, I didn't see an exception for those requirements for any type of project. But so I was hoping to get some clarification on that.
Okay. And I believe that's the Mr. Mackey question.
I believe so. All right, so to your point, Bob, no, the bylaw doesn't say this applies, this doesn't. Never has, but I can say for the 20 years that we've had Section 10 and Section 12, we have provided the zoning board pretty much with everything they want. And if we are only talking about impervious and we're not triggering, for instance, liquid hazardous materials, there is no requirement or there is no logical reason we would give you schematics for something that we're not going to build or use. And likewise, if we are saying that we are not going to exceed household quantities, then there are none. And there's no list to give you. And I would respectfully say that that's how we've arrived at them, and that has been the practice of the board. I am aware as those words come out of my mouth that a variety of folks are going to tell me that it's not presidential setting, and I would agree, but the logic is no different here because it's 40B as opposed to 40A. And I'd be happy to have Katie, I think she's on here somewhere, go over each item with you. It's actually her letter. But that is the logic behind why things were said to be not applicable. If there's no underground storage of hazardous materials, then I don't know what else I can give you other than say it doesn't apply. So I'm not trying to by any means give you the Heisman here. Hopefully it answers it. If not, I'd ask that you promote Katie and have her go over the letter with you. Or if you prefer, she can go over it with Sean, and if he thinks something's missing, happy to give it to you. The point was not to avoid anything. It's what I've done for virtually every other building I've ever done. Now, I would say in many cases, especially in industrial buildings, there is a hazardous materials, or there is liquid hazardous materials, or there's something else. And so you end up getting a lot of things because they do apply, not specifically to the impervious coverage, but as you're aware, some of the projects I've brought in front of the board, I've got 5 or more special permit requests. As I don't want to inundate you with 5 separate memorandums, I kind of lump it all together. And so what you're seeing is, the lists and the materials and the so on and so forth. but it's for different special permits under section 12. In this particular case, we narrowed it down to one.
Right. Okay. I mean, I appreciate that explanation. I guess in my mind, rather than just simply saying that the provision doesn't apply, for example, because you're not going to have greater than household quantities on the site, that there would be an affirmative statement or representation to that effect, rather than just a blanket statement that this, special permit criteria doesn't apply. Maybe follow that up with a factual assertion that says, because, we're not going to be storing neither underground or anything in greater than household quantities, then that would be something that we could use as a condition on the approval, and the whole, so that could, in the event that were to occur down in the future, that there would be some way to enforce that representation, as opposed to just assuming that it doesn't apply at all. I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from.
And I don't think we have a problem with that. As I said, I would have crafted it differently, and that's why Amy, I think, doesn't want to go forward with the decision, because we know things are going to change. I'm not making light of this, but I think we're semantically saying the same thing, though slightly different. I would have said that there's no grant of any relief under the properly quoted, I'm paraphrasing right now, the hazardous materials section of the bylaw, and if any is needed, they'll apply under section 12 in accordance with the requirements of 40A. But I think we're both trying to say the same thing, and I'm happy to work with the board, work with Amy, however appropriate to do that. And again, I'm speaking for Katie, but I don't think she's having any problem rephrasing some of the not applicables into affirmative, or supplementing it with an affirmative statement.
Thank you. And just one other question on the certification. I just wasn't quite sure. I guess is that a certification being provided on behalf of Howard Stein Hudson? It says I certify, and I just wanted to. It sounds like there's not a separate analysis that was done. You're relying on materials that have already been submitted to the board in terms of the drainage and compliance with the stormwater management regulations. I just want to clarify that's the extent of the certification we're going to get is what's in the letter. I just wanted to make sure.
That is correct. I mean, she signed it, so it's binding on her. And I don't know if this is good or bad, but I can tell you within 95% that is a almost exact verbatim certification that Tetra Tech gave on behalf of Walpole Park South for numerous properties. So that's where we came up with that.
Okay, thank you.
Not obviously Sean, different parts of Tetra Tech, but nonetheless.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had a quick follow-up on that. So Phil, are you still requesting the waiver?
Yes,
okay.
Because I believe what you had suggested, and I'm trying to track that, is we give all of the information to the board, and then assuming they concur with our assertions, they can waive it based on the fact that had we applied for a special permit, we would have satisfied the criteria.
Right. So on the waiver list that I sent over, your response back was that you were getting a special permit, but now you're okay with getting a waiver?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Great.
That's fine. You made sense, Amy. I'm following your lead on this.
Oh.
Go ahead, Suzanne. Yep.
Are you guys, Amy and Phil talking about the stormwater management certification? Correct?
When, at the risk of talking for Amy, when she sent over the list I want to say 2 weeks ago, when we kind of marked it up, we had actually asked for the board to grant a special permit under section 12. And she had determined, along with Judy, we all concurred. So we're all talking, when I say she, there's no disagreement on my end. The proper way forward, we felt, was to actually get a waiver from the special permit because we satisfied the requirements of section 12. And I'm not entirely sure how she's going to write the waiver, but had we applied under 40A, section 12 of our bylaw, we would have satisfied the requirement. Of that, stormwater is a part of it, but she's talking about how we're framing what we're asking for now. And so we're not asking for you to grant an additional special permit. We're asking you to grant a waiver from the special permit because we could have gotten one. And I see Amy nodding up and down.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what it is. You can't grant a comprehensive permit plus a special permit. So you're waiving the special permit because they would have met it anyway, and we'll put that in the decision.
And the other quick question I had was, so we're claiming we're not having any extra chemicals, like the pool chemicals aren't going to count, the street chemicals aren't going to count. No one's going to know what the chemicals are in this facility.
Under the zoning bylaw, we have a very specific definition of toxic.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I know.
And so we are claiming that you will not have toxic or hazardous materials in greater than household quantities. Which in reality, and now what we're not discussing here is the Board of Health is going to have a reporting requirement, has absolutely nothing to do with the zoning bylaw, comprehensive permit. They ask for everything. So the Board of Health is still gonna have the visibility of what's going on the site. But as far as zoning is concerned, we are saying we will not have more than household quantities of hazardous materials. And in reality, the bylaw did exactly what we all hoped it would do. The applicant took a look at everything. I'm not saying we don't have any chemicals. We're saying we aren't going to have any hazardous chemicals. And that's an important distinction.
Yep.
Because you can do a lot of things green these days. It may cost a little bit more, but it avoids a special permit. And so basically, and again, we're not asking, and we have no problem putting in the decision that you're not giving us a special permit. We need relief if we ever did in fact trigger it. But we believe after a week-long investigation and discussion that as far as hazardous and toxic materials go, we're not going to have greater than household quantities.
So that means the fire chief, when he goes down there, is not going to know where anything's stored, because we're not going to list anything like the pool. You're going to have chemicals in the pool. I don't know if the pool is household size. I don't remember the dimensions of the pool. Do you know the dimensions of the pool?
I don't off the top of my head.
Anyway, it's going to need some chemicals. So I just feel the fire chief should know where the stuff is stored.
And I don't think we have any problem telling them. And I don't mean that negatively. We can throw that as a condition.
That's just my main concern. If we go with nothing, no one knows where anything's stored. Maybe somebody in the Board of Health might know where the chlorine's located. I just want the fire chief to know, because that's what we normally do.
And that's
so Suzanne, that is a draft. That's on the draft decision. That is a condition on the draft decision.
Okay.
And I think that the applicant would be hard pressed to claim that letting the fire department know where chemicals are stored would be uneconomical to the project.
No. I would think they'd want to do that.
It's a standard condition, and I'm sure they'll abide by it. It's not a lot of heavy lifting for them.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Okay, and I see we have Sean Reardon with us tonight. And Sean, I have a question. I don't know if you've got the plans available, but I'm looking at the maximum building and impervious coverage, the requirement of 70%, and then lot 1, 25 plus or minus, and lot 2, 20% plus or minus. What's your take on the impervious coverage of this site? Is it something that we can work with, or is that going to be a problem for aquifer recharge?
Oh, I think it's something you can definitely work with, and remember, by complying with the stormwater standards, you know, the stormwater standards are largely there for the purposes of protecting the underlying groundwater. So, you know, that's your assurance that you're doing everything proper.
Okay, so right to the point, a waiver for the water resource protection district, is that reasonable, or are we protecting the water for the town of Walpole, or do you think we need to do additional work?
You know, I feel comfortable saying that you're adequately protecting the resources of the town of Walpole.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments about the water resources?
I need to ask Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale, have you ever built on a water supply before? Of the town's water supply?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much.
Which
in
town?
In Acton, in Littleton, in Tewksbury. I mean, everyone, all of us.
So they're sole source aquifer towns?
They're all towns with wells, and they all depend on recharge, just like this piece of land. It's very similar.
So they are sole source aquifer towns. Tewksbury?
I don't actually know what the definition of sole source is. So I know that they have wells, and that's how they get their water supply.
Tewksbury and Acton? Thank you.
And Littleton.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't hear any other questions on the water resource, the waiver about that. Let's talk about what's going on with the people at 91 Summer Street. And at the last meeting, we were talking, actually, Ashley, can you pull up the map so we can see the 91 Summer Street and the proposed townhouses that are going to be right along the property line for that? Because at our last meeting, Mr. Hale, you talked about having met with the neighbors at 91 Summer Street, and they've since sent a letter to the zoning board about...
I'm aware of the letter, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and they said they didn't meet with you until last Friday. So let's talk about what we can do to make sure that the setback, you know, I guess it is what, you know, you're asking for a 10-foot setback from the property line. But what we can do as far as protecting the neighbors with buffer fence or something like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have spoken with the Mullers several times very recently, and I understand that the way we requested the waiver was probably not the best way we could have requested the waiver. So what I've done is this afternoon I sent over a setback plan that provides for a larger distance than 10 feet. And if it's okay, I'd like to have Katie or Patrick put up the setback plan.
One sec. I just have it. Okay, so it should...
I have it here.
Okay, Leslie, you should be able to share the screen now.
So one of the things about the project is that the internal setback needs to be 10 feet as we have the plan drawn, but the external setback where we abut properties in the RB district can be larger than that and not affect the project. And that's actually not the right plan. That's not the right plan either. So the right. So
Actually, Ashley, can you let Patrick in?
Yeah.
Thank you. Patrick has it.
Sorry, his name goes up. May I think this one? Okay. Patrick should be a panelist soon. Did I click the wrong thing and kick him out?
So what?
Where did he go?
Is Patrick in the meeting?
Was, and I thought I promoted him, but I might have hit remove. I don't know where he went. Sorry about that. Katie, if I send you a link, can you send it to him?
Yes, it says he's rejoining right now.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Right next to each other.
So Ashley, he's stuck in just rejoining though.
Okay, let me, Katie, if it's okay, I'm gonna send you a link that will bring him right in. Sorry, everyone.
That's okay. I can, in the meantime, I can bring up the plan. I have it right here. Share screen. David, this is the one you were looking for, correct?
Yes. Yes. I apologize for the confusion. So, so where we abut the RB district, and the RB district has a 15-foot side yard setback requirement and a 25-foot rear yard setback requirement. So, you know, our waiver was worded so that it would protect our closest condition, which was really internal. So what we're proposing as an alternative is, and it would make it, I think, easier for the building inspector, is to just provide a setback plan, which, you know, when we're next to an abutter that in their home, we provide a 25-foot setback. So that's the backyard setback requirement in the RB district. And, you know, so this shows 36 feet for the front yard, which is what we requested in the waiver. But along the side yards, and then in the back of these houses on Summer Street, it's 25 feet. And then at a point along the western property line with 91, that would shrink back to 15 feet, as it is a side, for us, it's a side yard setback. But at that point, you know, the property is behind the 91 is very wooded. And so in addition, we'll provide, you know, a vegetated buffer. You know, typically we let the abutters, you know, have some say about the type of plant, but, you know, can be written in the decision however you want it. So, you know, I think they'd also like a fence, and we're happy to put in a fence.
Okay, let's just take a close look at this, because I actually think this is really good. So thank you for your work on doing this to protect the neighbors. Under regular, regular zoning, for an LM district, which is what we're talking about here, is the rear yard setback would be 25 feet. And what you're showing here is that you're actually keeping with that requirement.
So, yeah, I should just agree with that, but I think the LM district, the side yard.
Side yard is 40.
Yeah, the side yard is 40, and so, I think technically these are side yards for us, but, the point is that, like for the back of 87 and 79, to them, this seems like a backyard setback, and their backyard setback in this district is 25 feet, and so, that seems reasonable, and I think we'll have to modify our buildings just slightly, but that's not a problem. We can just do that in the final plans.
Okay. And Mr. Haley, you mentioned the bit about a fence and trees that would be planted along the setback for the neighbors, and I think that's something good. We'll put it into the conditions because we want to make sure that it's clear and everybody understands what they're getting. So it'll probably be in there.
And actually, the trees are on the plan as submitted already. So, but I'm happy to have it in the decision as well.
Yeah, I think that it'll just say the actual spacing of the trees and the size of the trees, just so that everybody's clear, that the neighbors are clear and you're clear on what's being proposed in that area, in the setback.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you and I think that's reasonable and a good step from where we were 10 feet from the line. Okay. And I hope the neighbors, appreciate that. We'll see. Okay. Amy Questle, you said there was some issues with parking. You want to talk about that?
Sure. First, I did have a question on that. So, the email that came through this afternoon with that plan indicated that you were also adjusting the lot line on the A&R plan. Is that correct? So you're adjusting the lot line to give you more setback to 91 Summer, but you're also then adjusting the lot line to give your apartment buildings more setback to go higher.
Yeah, so that the internal lot line that is between building 2 and the ownership goes through a wetland, and its placement is just completely arbitrary. It's just arbitrary. And so the section 10 or footnote 10 requirement is, is the 40 feet plus 1 foot. And so it needs to be 70 feet away to have a 70-foot building. Whether that makes any difference or not, it doesn't matter. It just seemed like we should just make it work.
So how are you dealing with, if you adjust the lot line for 91 Summer,
so we haven't
you're also
adjusted.
shifting that dwelling.
So I don't think that lot line is changing.
That side of the lot line's not changing?
The interior one is my understanding.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So the interior lot line towards Summer Street on that side, that's also shifting over? No?
If I may,
No.
I understand
None of the
what
lot
Amy's
lines-
asking.
Oh, okay.
So the only lot line that has shifted is our internal lot line.
Yes, I know. So I'm looking at, I'm trying to figure out the front portion of your internal lot line. Did that shift?
Oh, no, no, just,
Okay.
you know, just so that we could move the lot line more than 70 feet away from building 2 at its
Amy,
closest
just
point.
one segment moved, not the entire internal.
Just one segment.
Got it. Okay.
So it's not really a material change, but it, you know, there's so many details, you just have to.
So I'm sorry if I missed what you were saying, but so with regard to satisfying 91 Summer Street,
Yes.
you're shifting the building to give them a bigger to have a bigger setback, correct?
Yes.
In between?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we may, you know, use just smaller footprints, you know, in that area where we have a 25-foot setback.
So we're just going to condition a 25-foot setback.
I think that the way to do it is to condition it as shown on the setback plan. And then the building inspector knows exactly, and Sean and everyone else, it's on the plan.
And the reason why you don't want to just say 25 feet, because it drops to 15 feet along one point there. Is that right, Mr. Hale?
Yes, and because our internal lot line is 10 feet. And so, you know, we were trying for a one-size-fits-all waiver, and it just caused confusion, and it was, you know, not our finest thing.
And Chair, it could also be confusion about whether it's a side setback or a rear setback, given the geometry and the way the streets lay out. So the only thing I'd ask, David, is that we need some geometry on where that jog happens, so that we know how far off where exactly it transitions from 25 to 15.
We can do that.
And I was probably remiss. Any other board members have any questions on the setbacks, and particularly around, well, all the houses on Summer Street, but particularly 91 Summer Street? Okay. So back to you, Amy.
So the issue that that I had with the parking is that if the board decides that that they're not happy with the height, that they think that the height is an issue, and you know, they're not going to grant a waiver for the 70 plus or minus foot buildings. The parking, I wanted to confirm with the applicant that the parking would be as on a ratio basis. So you're keeping the parking as it is right now.
So if the number of units in the multifamily buildings change, which I'm not saying I'm happy with, but if it did, I think the way the waiver is written now, it's written as 1.87.
It is. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
And I think that the idea would be to keep that ratio the same, because you know, when we responded to the board and its peer reviewers and created more open space, we made a very large financial commitment. So when you go above 4 stories, and you go to the 5th story and the 6th story, you're agreeing to spend in pre-COVID construction dollars more than $10,000 additional for every single unit. So for 192 units to go from 4 stories to 5 stories, you know, that was a financial commitment of, you know, $1.9 million. And those parking spaces under the building cost a lot. When we built our project in Littleton, we had 3 48-unit buildings. One of those buildings had parking underneath with 38 effective spaces. it cost $1.2 million more than the other 48 unit buildings. And, you know, that was priced in 2014. So now you're talking about $40,000 a space. So we made a commitment of about $3.6 million to create that extra open space. So this is not something I take lightly. And if we end up with fewer units, then the parking, I have to end up with less parking underneath. So I'll have to keep the number of spaces on the surface, every one of them that I can, because it has a major financial impact on the project.
So I'm still confused.
Oh, yes. So ratio of 1.87.
Okay, but now you confused me further. So now you're saying that even if the units are reduced, the parking underneath will have to be reduced, but the footprint isn't. So I'm envisioning that the footprint won't be reduced. It's the height that the board has a concern with.
Yeah, no, that it's just that part of each building will be slab on grade, and part of it will have a basement for parking.
And it doesn't have that now.
Yeah, so each building has 100% basement with parking underneath.
Okay.
But so
we're looking at the same amount of impervious.
Correct.
Okay. I should have just said that, actually. That was my main question. Sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah. So the site plan won't change at all.
Got it. Okay.
Amy, was that your question about the
yes.
parking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, then we've addressed the 4 points that we had for tonight, and board members, do you have any other things that you want to bring up about anything on this as far as the issues that we've been talking about tonight? Judy Barrett, how are you this evening?
I'm just great.
Good. As our 40B expert, do you have any guidance for us? We're going to look to continue this because we still have some things that the applicant needs to provide, and said in the public hearing tonight that they need to provide it. Although I do think we're very close. We've got a draft decision. Do you have guidance for us?
About any particular matter, Mr. Chairman, or?
Yeah, well, really, what do you think our next steps should be?
Well, I think the height issue needs to be settled, and I'm not quite sure where we are with that. But it seems to me as though that's like almost the big sticking point at this point. Am I right about that? It just seems that way to me, that that's the issue probably driving this hesitance more than anything. If I'm missing something, please forgive.
No, you're not. In fact, I heard what Amy Questle said, and I guess the real question is, the way I see it is, there's three ways the board can go, because Amy clarified what our options are. Mm-hmm. One is to grant the waiver, they build the full height. Two is to deny the waiver, and it's 40 feet, and the applicant can decide to do what he wants to do at that point. Or the applicants can work with town council and find out if there's a reasonable compromise that can be made, and go from there. But am I correct that those are really the three options that we're looking at?
That's my understanding. And certainly if the applicant requests a waiver to a certain height and the board is not comfortable with that, there's nothing that says you can't grant the waiver in part to some lesser standard. But ideally you would want to have this worked out with the applicant before you close the hearing, because you would want to have a plan, I assume, of record showing those buildings as they're actually going to be executed. In other words, at -1 story. So ideally, yes, that should all be worked out. But it seems to me as though that's the big sticking point now, from all I'm hearing. And it would be nice to work that out. I mean, I would just say, I'm not anybody's advocate here except the board's, but I think a lot has been changed on this plan to try to address things that have come up. So it would be great to get this issue resolved, if it's possible, so that y'all can move on.
Okay. So, board members, Amy, should we be having a discussion at this point on, you know, what the board feels as far as the height of the building, or is that going to just complicate things?
So, you know, I think that, you know, just to reiterate, I think that if the board denies the waiver and it goes down to 40 feet for 2 buildings, I think that there is a chance, a very good chance that the applicant will claim that does make the project uneconomic. And if that is the case, then you know, the applicant goes to HAC and shows that it makes it uneconomic, and you know, that would be losing, you know, quite a few units. It's 2 stories on each building. So, however, I think that this board also has a valid concern with regard to the 6 stories, and so you know, I'm not advocating for the waiver to be denied, and I think that we've done a lot of work on this project, and you know, it would be a shame if we couldn't come to some kind of agreement with regard to the height, and you know, possibly, you know, just take 1 story off of each building, and you know, that I think we have a better argument there that it does not make the project more economic, less economic. Sorry, more uneconomic. No, more uneconomic.
I mean, I guess a straightforward question I have, and maybe, you know, David, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I sort of want to put you on the spot. Is the applicant open to the concept of taking 1 floor off these buildings and bringing them down in height that far?
So, what I will tell you is that I've been doing this for 20 years with Omni, and I've never once appealed any permit with any town. That doesn't mean I won't appeal this permit, but if we can come to a reasonable decision that I think is buildable. You know, I have some work to do. I have investors. I have a fiduciary responsibility, but I don't. The idea of, you know, wading through an appeal is not appealing.
Right.
No pun intended. But I need to see that the rest of the permit is functional and makes sense. And so that's my answer.
Sure. It's fair.
Okay. That being said, you have a copy of a draft decision at this point. I know it just came out today. I haven't even read the full thing. I know it's long, and that's what I know. But I guess you have to talk to your people, but I think you're hearing from the zoning board what the concerns are from the zoning board. Ashley, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I also spoke with the building commissioner, and that building downtown, he said, was 58 feet. I also looked through the bylaw for any kind of guidance on how height is regulated specifically for residential buildings. And the AQB allows for a building height of up to 60 feet. So I'm just putting that out there. I pulled up the elevations for the 6-story building, and it looks like each level is about 11 feet or so. So if you lopped off that top building, it would bring it down to about 60 feet. I think that the board should discuss this and kind of give some, I don't think the board's discussed specifically what they're comfortable with in terms of this. And I think that would be helpful to Amy as well as to the applicant.
Okay. Suzanne, go ahead. Thank you.
I'm totally comfortable with 1 story. I would be okay with that myself. I don't know if it's 60, we'd have to have some engineering involved. I'm not, 58 is what downtown is. You just brought up 60, but I would be comfortable is not a good word, but I would be okay with 1 story removed.
And I'm just,
Other board members, which, Drew Delaney or Bob? Go ahead, Bob.
No, I would just, I appreciate the applicant, willing to look at the decision in total and making an evaluation. And I think the board should do the same, and look at the other conditions. But I think, so I can't provide any more direction as to what I would absolutely accept in light of not seeing the rest of the decision on those other. But I am strongly in favor of reducing the height of the buildings as a general matter. So, I'm inclined in that direction, but I also would like to see the full decision.
Okay, Jane, go ahead.
Well, safety is always my shtick, and I'm still concerned about the density there. However, bearing all the other concessions that had been made in terms of trying to work it out, I wouldn't be adamantly opposed to it. I'd like to see how the rest of the issues are resolved, but it certainly would be far better than the 6th floor. Thank you.
Okay. Drew Delaney.
I believe that, well, I trust that the fire department's opinion in the matter is where I stand. Not being a professional in fire safety or that of the resident or potential residents, I think that's certainly something that weighs upon my opinion, and I'd certainly like to see the building height reduced, whether it's a floor. The best we can hope for.
do we know how many units are on? I was just trying to count. Do we know how many units are on that top floor?
I mean, 108 divided by 6 is 18. So I would think, how's my math, Hale, Mr. Hale? But probably
Knocks off 32 units. 19 one beds, the rest 2 beds.
So
There's 18 in the larger one and 14 in the small.
Yes.
yeah, okay. So that's the numbers. And Mr. Hale, I wouldn't put you on the spot because I know you have to talk to your folks, but I think you're hearing where the ZBA is on this. And although I'm probably a little tougher than the rest of them as far as I would probably, I'd say all or nothing, but I think that if you're getting a consensus from other board members saying that reduction down 1 level would probably be a good thing, that's where they're coming from. But again, looking at the whole project, but I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be worked out, with your folks, but you're hearing where the zoning board is, if that helps.
John,
Yes.
I just want to add one thing. I am opposed to this philosophically, but I'm trying to be reasonable about it here. But I will have to say that I'm saying I'm not adamantly opposed. However, I would want to have reassurance, 5-star reassurance from the fire department. There were going to be no safety issues. If we don't have enough personnel, then I think that's a safety issue. And if we don't have something high enough, that's another issue. So my ultimate decision will be based upon what I feel is satisfactory, that the fire department can assure that they can take care of any problems there, because safety is a big one.
Okay, thank you. I think that's where we're at. So Amy Questle, does that help as far as for your perspective in, you know, drafting a decision as far as where the board members are at this point?
Yes, yes, and again, when you guys do decide to close the hearing and vote, if you, you know, if something changes in your vote, I still have 40 days to issue a decision. So, you know, I'm assuming that's not what's going to happen, because we're going to work through the decision, all of us. So we should be okay. But we still do have that safety net.
Okay, good.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's appropriate at this moment or not, but it seems like perhaps we could have a conference call with town council and myself and Bill and Lou and Sean to work through the decision so that we're, you know, comfortable that it's a workable decision from both points of view.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. And the only other thing I'd add, Ashley, to that conference
yes,
call.
Of course.
So, and one question, Amy Questle, the intersection redesign, where is that part of this decision, or where is that in this whole scheme?
So I did make that a condition. I made it a condition that the applicant would have to fund, you know, 50% of that. And so we still need to, I still need to work with Mr. Johnson and the select board on the other 50%, and, you know, and how we go about doing that, and how we go about getting that, and how we go about funding that. So the condition is there that it has to be done, and that the applicant has to provide, you know, 50% of the cost. And that right now the way it's written is that the condition is that the applicant has to, the applicant is responsible for the construction. That condition is going to, I think, grow quite a bit, because you know, there are some responsibilities on the town's part with that, so we'll have to put those in also. So so it's in there, but it is going to change.
Okay. And I just want to make sure that people watching this, because I can tell there's a lot of probably people from South Walpole watching this, that the selectmen have taken a position that they want that intersection redesigned and rebuilt. So, you know, the question is, how is this project going to affect it? So that's a separate issue there. Okay, so that being said, let's, there's a few things that are still up in the air that we need to take a look at. And what's a good time to, you know, reconvene this meeting to? Ashley, is there a recommendation that you'd have?
So I would suggest we would continue this to March 15th. I think Mondays work well for Amy and Judy. That would give time for Amy to update the decision based on tonight's discussion. That would give time for us to meet with the applicant to go through the conditions, and that would give time basically to go through. I mean, it's a very long decision, so I think that the 15th would be a good day to continue to, if that's open for folks.
Okay, Suzanne, is that okay for you?
The Ides of March.
Yes,
Yep.
Ides of March. Okay. And Mr. Hale, is that okay for you?
It is. I'd dearly like to get a date for a conference to go over the decision, but, you know, and it may take more than one.
Yeah, I think it might take more than one. So,
Yeah.
But I think what we're saying is that we expect to have that done. You know, I'm not going to get into everybody's schedules.
Okay.
on that. But I think if we look at, having the next public hearing on the 15th, so an extension until the 16th, that would give us time to go through the decision and also for you to do work on your end and get this really moved along at this point. So
That works for me, and I thank you.
okay, so at the request of the applicant, we would continue this hearing until the 15th, and he would grant an extension until the 16th. And could I have a motion to that effect?
Yeah.
7 p.m. So moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? Ashley, did you want to add something?
No, I don't. Thank you.
7 p.m. by Zoom call. Okay, no further discussion. And any comments? Everybody can make it? Okay, roll call vote. Jane Coffey.
aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Drew Delaney. Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee. Aye. Okay. So everybody knows what we got to do, and we did get the draft decision, so we'll take a look at that. And does anybody else have anything else for us? Suzanne, it looks like you want to say something.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, everybody. That concludes that part of the hearing tonight, and we just have some minutes to review, which I don't think we got the. Amy Messier, did we get the minutes for February 24th? You're on mute, Amy.
Sorry. You don't have February 24th, but you do have February 11th.
Okay. I'm gonna have to take a look at February 11th again, so.
I haven't either.
Okay.
I
Okay.
haven't.
So, unless somebody has anything else for the board, and I already, earlier, I thank Bob for his work on the KW Steel decision for for School Street. That was complicated, so I appreciate that. Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second,
Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. No further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, so carried. Okay, good night, everybody.
Right.
Night.